You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. Whether it's for food, fuel, drinks, or snacks, about half the U.S. population shops at a convenience store every day. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
Welcome to Convenience Matters. My name is Jeff Lenard with NACS.
And I'm Carolyn Schnare, also with NACS.
So, Carolyn, we have a real treat today. It's often you hear from members that, I just wish I could talk to somebody that's been through all facets of the industry, that's run a big company, that knows ins and outs and can kind of share advice. And that's what we're going to do today. So today, joining us by phone is Sonja Hubbard. She's principal with Yates Group, and she's also better known as CEO of Mart in Texarkana, Texas.
And the first female chairman of NACS.
Welcome, Sonja.
Thanks. Glad to talk to you guys.
So in looking at leadership, you've been through it all with Mart in learning how to grow a company, expand a company, build the brand, and then ultimately transition out when there was a price offer that was just too good to not take. What are some of the things that you would suggest? Well, that's a big question. Let me start that again. If there's one thing that you could leave somebody with in that whole journey to say, hey, pay attention to this moment in time as you run your business, what would it be?
Boy, wow. Narrowing all that down to one moment is pretty tough because there were lots of good ones, and I probably learned the most from some of the bad ones. The transition, the thing I do, and you've heard me say it a million times, I think the connections that I made through NACS and the industry are some of the things that got me through the tough times. It's some of the things that made the good times better. I mean, just the sharing of ideas and how do we do this different and better. It was all hard. Probably the hardest part was the last part and getting out of this industry. But I guess that's just an evolution, one of those changes lots of companies go through. And so I'm glad to be able to talk to you guys today and stay connected with my friends and colleagues.
And I would imagine it's also the customers that you deal with, both the employees and the customers. Just those daily connections within our industry.
Oh, yeah.
You hear about how it's special, and I know that you talked about some of those experiences at our recent leadership forum, where we had a panel where talked about some of the leadership issues, and you really talked about how conducting self-evaluations to kind of learn about the business and identify what are the key points to keep moving forward. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. I think one of the things that I think we kind of did as we progressed, and we all do a little bit, but I would recommend to do a little more formal process, is sort of a self-assessment of your company and where you're going and, what the direction your strategies are. Because, as we evolve to the point of considering a sale, you start doing that and you look at things different and you find things one, should have been doing better to make more money. But then particularly if you're looking at some sort of exit strategy, whether it's an ESOP to your own employees or selling within the company or selling stock or, like we did, ultimately selling the assets. There's a lot of things you would do and evaluate to reposition your company, whether it's for tax reasons. You might, some things you've done in the past to maybe save taxes, now also reduce your EBITDA. And then there's a lot of estate planning and tax planning for a disposition. So it really is some things we learned a lot of lessons that in hindsight probably could have saved us some money on the front end if we would have been a little more diligent at that. But I think some days we get caught up in the daily grind. We're just out there trying to make money. We're worrying about what the gas margin is today or what some of the legislators are doing to us, which also cost us a lot of money. And so, but don't forget looking back at yourself too.
So speaking of that, actually, you were a huge supporter of your company, of a lot of our leadership programs that NACS had to offer over the years. And I remember meeting tons of your employees as they even grew through the ranks. We used to have a program several years ago, a dozen years ago or so, that was entry-level cashier folks that started and came and learned their leadership journey up until executives. And I think I was there with your husband, Bob, at one point. So I know you put a lot into helping the employees in your company, and you mentioned something about ESOP. You were thinking about that for a while. Can you tell us more about employees and growth, and maybe something you either learned as you were exiting or throughout that you think was really keeping them trained and happy and growing?
I think you're right. Some of the programs, whether, NACS or just education or internal programs, you have to grow your people. I mean, because there's going to be a turnover, whether, just anticipated and that you want to take that action, or whether somebody goes somewhere else. And just, growing the people and seeing them evolve, I think, was one of the most fun things. I remember one lady that I talked to last week. She started with us just out of college and was a receptionist and an administrative assistant, and ultimately wound up being one of the best merchandisers we had in the company, and one of the suppliers stole her. But, that's something I look back, and it's a feather in my hat. That's something I'm really proud of, because she has really grown and advanced. And so as you see your people, they're the ones you need. I haven't seen anybody in this business yet, any CEO that can do it themselves. And so you've got to rely on your people. And they're the ones I miss the most. I do stay in touch with a lot of them. And, going in and out of the stores, to Jeff's comment earlier, that's some of the hardest part, seeing them and not really being a part of them. But we still stay in touch. And it makes you proud to see them move forward and progress.
And of course, with customers, I know some of the customers, in the True Blood series of books, didn't you have vampires and werewolves coming into Easy Mart? Wasn't that in the book series?
You're right. I'm trying to think, what was the name of the fake blood they got? But yeah, I guess True Blood.
Yeah, True Blood.
That's what it was. So man.
Yeah, so Easy Mart got a shout out. Yeah. So vampires and werewolves.
Absolutely.
As long as you're wearing wet shoes and shirts, you're okay.
Okay, that's right. And it's just got to be, thank goodness we're open 24 hours a day and at night.
Yeah. Now, also, Carolyn was talking about leadership, and now we have a new program at NACS we introduced last year, and it's about leadership for women. And I imagine that as you were going through your career, it was much more unusual for a woman to be leading a convenience store organization. Are there any tips that you have for folks out there who are second generation, third generation, first generation that are female, and how they might look at situations and how to get ideas, because there may be slightly different context depending upon your gender?
Yeah, and I think we spent a long time trying to say there wasn't any difference, and that we should all be treated the same, and we should in many rights, and everybody should have a level playing field. But the reality is, just like Southerners or Northerners or somebody from the West, we have different interests and different cultures and things, just different lifestyles that have to, I think, be addressed. And so I do think it really helps for the women to connect with other women within the industry. I think being one of the, I hate to say this, forerunners of sort, because there were lots of times early on I would be one of the few women in the room, that I kind of had to make sure I played nice, and you didn't really want to stand out too much. And I think the women of today have a little different advantage. They can actually use their gender almost to an advantage, because I think an assertive, strong woman, if everything's equal right now in a position, she probably has a leg up on some of the men. So, Jeff, just as companies really are, they're looking to diversify. And so, things turn around. And so I would encourage women to align with other women, to participate in some of these groups. And I think, we were taught, we probably more than little boys, women, little girls were taught to be nice and be polite and wait your turn. And I think it's time to quit waiting our turn. It's time to a little bit lean in, and ask for what you want and step out there and fight for it.
I think that's commendable. I mean, I've been at NACS for more than 15 years now, and you were a role model to me when I started way back when, because you were coming on as chairwoman, and And you and I can both, the one benefit is that there's never lines for the restrooms at NACS events, which is unusual
That's right.
in the world of public bathrooms. I go in and out because
It's like an AC/DC concert.
yeah, exactly. There's just a few of us chicks that are running. Yeah. So, but I mean, no, we do appreciate everything you've done. And I, like I said, I looked up to you, and I still do, because you were in a position, even back then, it was, like I said, 10 years ago when chairman?
Yes,
Yeah, a decade
10-year
ago.
anniversary. And we'll
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that in a second.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, what your message is so true. And I think you're right. There are things that as females that we need to do more of and speak up and lean in. And I think there's some things that our male listeners can also listen to, of things that you don't need to do. Just because I'm talking loud doesn't mean I'm mean and overbearing. I'm just trying to get my voice heard. And you said it much better than I just did.
Yeah, so speaking about your chairmanship 10 years ago, one of the things was we said, well, we're doing something a little bit different. We did it the year prior. So how do you feel about getting an RV with a bunch of folks for a week and visiting our customers, NACS members, and just going to visit stores and driving around? I think we drove
Why
around.
were you in an RV, Jeff?
Because we were visiting stores.
And you were trying to get to the NACS show, right?
Well, we were trying to get to Las Vegas. So we drove around California, and the NACS show was in Las Vegas that year. So we were basically just kind of showing people some of the things that were around there. And so we called up Sonja and said, how do you feel about taking a week off from work and sitting around a bunch of people you don't know that well, driving around visiting stores? Now, I don't know how I want to ask that question, but what was your reaction, and why'd you say yes?
Not exactly. I wondered that a couple of times. And but no, it was, when you proposed it, I saw it. Obviously, I was chairing NACS. We're marketing, and this was going to be this great marketing tool, and I thought it would be fun and people would enjoy it. What it ultimately turned into was one of the best both career moments of my life that I reflect back on, and for sure the highlight of my chairmanship. And it was, from all facets. We laugh about it. If you want to get to know somebody, oh my God, spend a week with them in RV. And I think we fought and laughed and cried and got to know each other, and in ways that you can't make up those kind of stories. And they were fun, and we enjoyed it. I also feel like while we were out there, again, arrogantly or naively thinking, I'm here to represent NACS, and I am going to share what all of our customers, members need to know about us and our message and what we were doing. It was just the opposite. I got something every single place we went. There was not a retailer that we visited that I did not take away 10 times what we possibly could have shared with them. And everybody was so open. As you remember, we sat out in lawn chairs in front of a motel talking one night. We went to somebody's country club and had dinner. We toured stores. We saw back rooms. We did it all. And I did. I learned a lot that I brought back to our company, and I hope that came through when we ran the video, and that everybody else and the members who attended NACS that year learned from it too. Yeah,
and the lawn chair story has a little bit of a before the story, and we had gone to a convenience store, and we picked up 2 items, bug spray and wine. And I remember the clerk saying, you guys have an interesting evening planned. So that's how we spent that night. But earlier that day, we had come through Yosemite, and we visited this place just on the east side of Yosemite called Whoa Nelly Deli. And Food and Wine magazine just named them. They named 10 great gas stations to get food, and they were mentioned. I remember sitting out there and meeting the owners, meeting a couple generations of the owners there, and the wonderful food they had. They had mango margaritas. They had a live band. It was really an incredible experience, and just watching the sunset, realizing we're eating. It was like short ribs with mango margaritas, watching the sunset at an Exxon station.
Did you drink the
wine? Or a mobile station, I should say. The wine was later. We were
and
not.
The bug spray and the wine and
yeah, that happened to do with too much time in an RV.
That's right. Yeah. And that's when we did learn that apparently Big Greek Wedding was right, and Windex will take care of almost all problems, including bugs.
Yes.
So, but no, you're right.
You can clean shoes with them too. I've heard.
Oh,
With
well,
Windex.
same. We may be doing a commercial here. We need to reach out to.
Brought to you by.
So
Yeah.
we could tell a lot of fun story, but really it was all about the connection I think people feel every day when they go to convenience stores. It's just we were really made to feel extremely welcome, and that's something that we've seen in our careers here, that you've seen in your career, and I assume that's why you have a title of Principal Yates Group, because you're continuing that career. And how is that rolling out in terms of next retail experience?
And it's interesting. The good part is that I've got to stay connected to the industry to some extent, just because part of it, while we sold all the assets, some of the stores we actually are leasing to the buyer, and so we're managing some activities for them, some services, and so we're staying connected. We're working with them right now to look at construction of a couple of sites. So we're going to do the real estate development on some of the property we already had that they will lease to operate a C-store. So that, again, is keeping me engaged with the industry, and NACS has invited me to stay active on the political action committee. So that part has been kind of fun, but we're also looking at different things. It's funny. So many industries you don't realize that are very similar. We are partnered in on the development of some car washes now. A lot of convenience retailers already did car washes. That wasn't something we did a lot of. But as you got into and they start talking about managing cash and credit card fees and some of the environmental concerns and something, I thought, I think I'm back in the convenience store business again. So we're doing that, staying involved on the real estate side, and then I'm on more boards than I should be. So life has remained pretty active.
Well, and as you mentioned previously in the beginning, we were talking a little bit about things you reflect back upon, and that's the strategy. I think you said if you could have really sat down and thought through the strategy as opposed to just working the day to day and really just trying to get the things done that need to get done. You mentioned that was something that you would recommend for folks in the future. And now you said that works for other industries too, you mentioned, or is that something or I guess let me step back here. How should people listening, retailers listening, suppliers, people who run, even not in this industry that run companies, what's a suggestion that they should just do right now and help themselves progress in the future?
Yeah. Because regardless of how you progress, I mean, all businesses ultimately have either an exit, or CEOs, leaders have exit, their transitions, or the need to monetize. I would say you need to make, we've got our 1 year and 5 year plans, but even looking 10, 20, and not just succession, but also is there a possible exit strategy? I mean, like within our business and within so many convenience stores, still family owned. Different family members, particularly as the families grow and become larger, have differing interests. They have differing needs, desires to both stay active or to monetize. And so those things have to be openly discussed, and I think some of the best examples I saw were families that had structured family meetings with a non-family member sort of leading those annually to kind of look at, okay, and are there ways, and if monetizing that is something you want to do, then that's where you do need to get in some of the experts that manage the sale, or even the accountants to look at both the tax, evaluate your tax status, how that would be impacted. Are there ways that you can do? Because we put a lot of money on the bottom line simply by doing some tax planning, and into the millions. And so we had the accountant in last week, and he was very excited, patted himself on the back, which I've been patted him too, but because it benefited us all. So, looking at the assets, like us, the small businesses, and this was one thing I said at the leadership assembly, we had acquired a lot of assets, some stuff that came along when we brought a group of stores that really had nothing to do with stores. What are those outlier assets? Are those assets that are worth a lot more of something besides what your primary business is? And pull those to the side first, because once you roll this package out, it's hard to grab stuff back. And so, we did, I think, a decent job of carving out some assets first and said, these are not part of the deal. And those were worth more to us or the family separately. So there really is a lot of those kind of things that you can, and look at the way, because this industry sells on multiples of EBITDA. What are the things in EBITDA? Are you writing off everything really fast and you're pulling your EBITDA down, where maybe you ought to look at it the other way? Some of and how you're managing some of the expense side. So I would say take a good hard look. That gets back to that self-assessment, and it will take some experts, because it is a complicated business, and even with some of the tax simplification, it's still not simple.
And of course, I when you're talking about getting the family together, it has to be a dedicated event. This can't be like the morning of Thanksgiving and then a couple hours later you have turkey and the fixings and all that. This is, you carve out
You're right.
You have a day set aside. It's focused on this. It's not a by the way conversation.
With an outside family member leading it. That was important, I think you said.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I do. You're exactly right.
And that doesn't matter if you have 300 stores or if you have 30 stores. It's probably sound advice for even if you have 3. Yes.
Or 3.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think you're exactly right. And I think probably what we learned through some of this, and one of the advisors told us, was being primarily a doer, and particularly my sister, husband, and I were in some of the executive roles, and we've just kind of managed stuff. And, they even pointed out in this new company that we need to force ourselves to allow the next generation to manage some of the assets, to make some mistakes. Because how else are they going to learn? They said, are they going to wait and something happens to you guys and now they're expected to step in and take over? You're setting them up for failure. And they're right. So we have actually looked, and we have continued our foundation, which was named after my dad, Jim Yates. And, they are involved in that, and we're making them research some of the charities and look at some of those things and make some recommendation on how those funds should be allocated. And we sat down as a group and set the rules and parameters of how we wanted to give and what things were important within the car wash vetting. I gave them all the financial proposal, and here's what we're looking at, and here's how we're going to invest in it, and here would be your share. And everybody made a decision to participate. And in hindsight, we probably should have done that more in the convenience store business a little too. So, but we're learning.
Mm-hmm. So in mentioning your 10-year, 5-year, 1-year plans, one of the things is you go through disruption. And right now we're talking about disruption and how everything is up for grabs. What's happening with fuel? What's happening with tobacco? What's happening with this? When you were chairman of NACS and you were CEO of Easy Mart throughout this whole time of the previous Great Recession in 2008, 2009, 2010. Your dad, when he was chairman, even at his NACS show speech said, just want to tell you that things will be all right. And it was another economic downturn. So having gone through those events, tough economic downturns, and looking at today where there's disruption everywhere, anything that you can suggest that people look at? We've been through this. This is what you need to look at. This is how you need to behave, because things will get better if you do this. So do you have any advice for folks who are concerned about any economic conditions?
Oh, yeah. I think you've always got to stay focused on the changes, and you got to watch them and see the trends. We tend to sometimes not react quick enough. But as I've heard you say on so many occasions, this industry is one of the most reactive, nimble, and adjust so quickly. And I think that is partly why we have survived. You look at how we have transitioned from the time we started opening stores in 1970 to today, and we all still sell convenience, but what convenience has changed so dramatically. So I truly believe staying engaged and active and listening to the trends. Some of the data that you guys put out shows some of that. We've got to, I am strong about being proactive on the legislative front, because what the guys in D.C. do every day can change your business almost overnight. And so, those are some of the things. But then another retailer told me one night over cocktails, and we were both crying in our beer a little bit. He said, you know what? So many of the things that I look back that I thought were going to be the death of our industry, whether it was legislative or economic issues or changes in consumer habits, he said, all of those things we adjusted to, and ultimately we're better for it. We became better for the bad things that happened to us, and we became a stronger business. I think that's true. And I do think, just like my dad did say, everything's going to be all right. because we have, as an industry, we've proved that we're able to adjust to those things and move forward.
Well, I can't think of a better way to end it. Thank you, Sonja. And for anybody that sees Sonja at a future meeting, ask her about this advice. She's happy to provide it and make your business better. Also, don't forget to ask Sonja about the time German tourists took pictures of her because they thought she was a famous TV star. So, Sonja,
That's a good one.
thank you again for joining us today.
And thank you for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.